Hi YouTube. So I decided, since I'm going to start doing a monthly wrap-up for my reading, I'm going to go ahead and do one today. That's everything I've read from January to June. And I have 4 pages printed out. As you can see, it's kind of small print. So I'm just going to jump right in. I did get into audiobooks this year. However, I didn't start until February. Yeah. I finished some in February. I did start them in January, but so anyways, obviously I'm going to start with January. For manga, I simply read 10 volumes of Nisekoi, False Love. That's basically a harem manga. For those of you who don't know what that is, that basically means it follows one guy and then there's multiple love interests. This particular one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I believe. So yeah, I read the first 10 in January. I'm not going to really review that till I'm done. Then for books, I read quite a few children's books. I read one that was My Side of the Story, where basically fairy tales retold. I have one that's called For Real, I Parade It in My Underpants. That is The Emperor's New Clothes told by the Emperor. I read another one that was Rumpelstiltskin as told by Rumpelstiltskin. And then there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more of those. And they were just kind of fun little picture books. I like to read picture books throughout the year. Just as kind of like, a nostalgia thing. As I get further into the year, I've reread some that I've read as a child. Those weren't one of them, but they seemed fun, so I was going to read them. Then I read Pumas and Cheetahs, which were again, children's nonfiction series, all about big cats. That was 2 of them. Then in February, I finished it. So then in February, with that series, I read Lions, Jaguars, Leopards, and Tigers. Then back in January, I also read the Serpent and Dove trilogy, which was Serpent and Dove, Blood and Honey, and then Gods and Monsters. It was an interesting series. I enjoyed the idea. I enjoyed most of the writing. However, I did feel like the magic system wasn't explained that well. Then I also read the Delirium series, and I read that over January and February because I also read the short stories. So in January, I read the 3 novels, which were Delirium, Pandemonium, and Requiem, along with the short story Alex, obviously from Alex's point of view. Then in February, I read the other 3 short stories, which were Annabelle, Raven, and Hannah. So I liked Delirium. I enjoyed Pandemonium. Requiem, I did not care for. So again, in Delirium, an interesting concept. Love is a disease. People are cured of this disease when they're 18 by having part of their brain removed. Okay, pretty cool. Interesting idea. However, it didn't really go into, it still seemed like the parents loved their children. The children were still well-rounded and everything. The main character still talked about hugging her best friend. And then one thing that really stood out to me in the first book is she's working on her interview to basically decide what her future was be. And she's talking to her aunt about it, and they're doing a mock interview. And she says, "Oh, I love children." And that right there, okay, they don't want love to be a thing. And yet, her aunt doesn't react to the fact that she uses the word love. So that's kind of okay. Then Pandemonium is, of course in this series you're going to have a rebellion. That is her joining the rebellion, basically. Then Requiem, of course, is the end game. And without spoilers, it was a dual point of view. The secondary point of view was extremely unnecessary. Really didn't add anything. It was supposed to be from a Cured's point of view, and again, didn't really feel the lack of love. So yeah. Then for the short stories, Alex, I rate it 1 star. Like, oh my god, that was absolutely horrible. And basically, it just makes Alex seem like an absolute psychopath. And that's not how he's portrayed in the books. Then Annabelle, Raven, and Hannah were a little bit better. I think I gave them all 3. So overall, I gave the series, I believe it was like 3 stars, 3 stars, 3 stars, 1 star, 2 stars, I'm sorry. Then 1 star and 3 star for the short stories. So overall, I would say it's about a 3. It's something to maybe check out if you've been wanting to. If it's something you're on the fence about, I might just skip it, to be honest. So that was everything in January. And then in February, I read 3 more books, which were A Dream So Dark and A Blade So Black, which were the first 2 books in, I know there's going to be at least 3, possibly more, in the Nightmareverse, which is a retelling of Alice in Wonderland, and it was actually done quite well. It was different than any other Alice in Wonderland retelling I've read. Basically, Wonderland has nightmares that can come to the real world. And the more bad things that happen in the real world, the more nightmares, the stronger the nightmares. And Alice has to fight them. And that was pretty good. It also, it was written by a black author. Alice is a black girl. It did bring in, some of the modern day politics, and such. So that was pretty interesting. Then I read Mermaid Moon, was the last actual book that I read. And again, that was relatively interesting. A retelling of The Little Mermaid, and also has like sirens mixed in with it. Again, the magic could have been explained a little better, but it wasn't horrible. Then for my audio, I listened to some Beverly Cleary books, which was the Ramona Quimby audio collection. That was all 8 of the Ramona Quimby books. The main reason I listened to that is I remember being in elementary school, and I had to read Ramona Quimby, age 8. And I remember absolutely, positively despising that book. And so I was kind of like, okay, I've been getting into audiobooks. I wonder if I could listen to it. I kind of want to know, what did I despise so much about it? No clue. Were they my favorite books? No. However, did I hate them? No. If I was younger, would I have liked them more? Possibly. However, based on the experience with Ramona Quimby, age 8, probably not. However, as an adult, I didn't mind them. I found Ramona quite funny. She was kind of your typical tomboyish girl, doing different things and getting into scrapes, dealing with school, stuff like that. Just your basic coming-of-age story. Then I had the Beverly Cleary audio collection, which was several books by her. I remember there was Mitch and Amy. They're fraternal twins, a boy and a girl. There was one, I can't remember the title of it, but it was about a cat. Then there was Ellen Tebbit, and I can't remember the second one, but basically there's a boy in that book that she doesn't get along with. The second one was about her. So that one was okay. Some of them, they were a little more dated. However, I also felt they were perhaps a little more charming than Ramona. Then the last audiobook I listened to was The Ugly Duchess. That was a historic romance. It was supposed to be based on the story of the Ugly Duckling. I rated that one, I believe, 2 stars. It was just a generic romance. And there were a few things that bothered me. The main couple, they got married, and the woman found out that basically the guy married her on his father's orders. Now, he did love her, but she never gave him a chance to explain that. So he ran off to sea, and then like 10 years later he comes back, and then he says there's all these reporters outside, we gotta stay locked in the house. And there's no reporters, they're people he hired. And it was one of those that was kind of like, ew, not cool. So yeah, that one really wasn't for me. Then I read a good bit of comics and manga. So to start with, I finished the Nisekoi series. So I read volumes 11 through 25. I liked most of the series. However, I did feel like a lot of the girls didn't really get fleshed out, and a lot of the secondary characters really didn't either. It also got repetitive in the middle. So I think overall, some of the volumes I did give 4 stars, but I think the majority were 3. It's something I just feel like dragged on a little too long, and it didn't really bring anything new. So then I also read Rosario Vampire, Volume 1 through 10, and I started Season 2 in February as well. I read the first 4 volumes of that. Now, Rosario Vampire I really did like. Again, it is a harem, so you got 1 boy, and in that one, it is 4 girls. I believe it's 4. However, there's a twist in this series. Obviously, vampire in the title. Basically, this human boy signs up to go to school. He has really bad grades. He can only get into 1 high school. Well, it turns out to be Yokai Academy. And yokai in Japan is like their spirits are monsters. So you have a vampire, a succubus, an ice spirit, and a witch, who are all vying for his attention. And it's pretty obvious he's going to wind up with the vampire. However, in that one, I really liked the friendships between the girls. There was a lot of battles, because they are monsters, so they're not necessarily supposed to be good. And, so yeah, there's a lot of battles. He has to hide the fact that he's a human. And I felt like the characters were pretty well fleshed out in that series. So I enjoyed that one a lot. Then I also read in February Saga Compendium 1, which is the first 54 volumes of Saga. And I love Saga. I love Saga so much. And just the characters, the story, it draws me in. So I rated that one 5 stars, obviously. And I actually did that as a buddy read on Goodreads with a friend of mine on there. He started updating, the different volumes and everything. I was like, what, I really want to reread this. He was like, hey, go for it. And so we kind of traded comments back and forth, and I just feel like it's one that, it gets you thinking as well. Like, there's different commentaries in there that are just kind of like, okay, this is what happened. Like there's this war. This girl died in it. She doesn't know the landmine that killed her. Was it the Moonies, the planets, her and Peoples? Doesn't matter. She's dead. And she pretty much says that. It's something that kind of makes you think. But yeah, go on and on and on about Saga. Needless to say, I really liked that. Then, the last thing I read was, or one of the last things I read, was 3 volumes of Clean Room, which is a Image comic, I believe. Or not Image, Vertigo, I'm sorry. And it was interesting. Kind of sci-fi, kind of horror. The end just kind of ended. It was very open-ended. And again, both of these comics, Saga and Clean Room, NSFW, for sure. There's pretty intense violence and everything in all of them. So, it's just something to keep in mind. Then, the last thing I did read in February was the first volume of Justice League Odyssey. And I'll talk about that more with March's, because that's when I finished it. So then in March, I read the first 3 light novels of Kuma 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 Bear. And they were absolutely adorable. There's this girl, she's a gamer, a shut-in gamer, named Yuna. She's 15. Her parents are kind of absent. She made a whole lot of money in the stock market, so she doesn't need to work. She doesn't really leave the house. She has this role-playing game online that she really likes. So she logs in. You've logged so many hours. You get to choose one of these prizes. And when she picks it, it's a completely overpowered bear suit with bear feet and bear puppets for her hand. And then after, some questions and stuff, she's transported to the game world. And it's something that's just kind of lighthearted and cute. She just kind of goes around teaching people, how to bake and stuff. She helps people out. It's just fluff, but I really did enjoy it. So that was 3 volumes that month. Then I read So Many Beginnings, a Little Woman remix. So I've been reading this Classics Remixed series. Basically, they take classic stories, in this case, like I said, Little Women, and they change something about it to, for a underrepresented minority. So in the case of So Many Beginnings, they kept it set right after the Civil War. And the March family was actually a family of former slaves living in the Roanoke colony, Roanoke Freed People's Colony. And, again, it just follows the sisters growing up like the original Little Women did. But it does, kind of show how even after the Civil War and after slavery was over, there were still struggles. So it deals with that as well as your, the health issues that they had in the original book and the love and so on. So that was interesting. I did like that. Then I read Hard Ground, which was a murder mystery. That was book 11 in that series, which I didn't realize when I picked it up. However, I was able to pretty much jump into it. It's just kind of your standard murder mystery. You have your main character. You get enough of his personality in that book that you don't really feel like you're missing anything. And, so yeah, it was pretty interesting. And, yeah, not much to say about that. Then I read the play Twelfth Night by Shakespeare. and I did enjoy that as well. I do, enjoy Shakespeare. I feel like Twelfth Night is one of the more straightforward in the way it's written, easier to understand than some other ones, so a good place to start. Then, last year, I read all of the Magic Treehouse series that was out. That was my nostalgia read, like I mentioned earlier, rereading things I read when I was young. So, the newest book has come out, and that is Sunlight on the Snow Leopard. So, I read that, and I did enjoy it. It was just kind of a nice way to relax, remember my childhood. And to go along with that, I also read Scary Stories for Young Foxes. And I love foxes. They're my favorite animal. So, of course, I had to read it. And some of them were pretty creepy. Others just kind of. Now, the first one was where the teacher got rabies. That was just like, wow. And the frame was pretty interesting. There's 6 stories, and there's 6 young foxes. One story scares away each fox. So that was cute and everything. Then I read Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, all 3 books. And again, that was something I'd read when I was younger. Never read the other 2, so I was like, I'm going to reread this one and find the other 2. And again, just your standard picture book, with the twist of giant food. It was pretty fun. Then I read Mike Mulligan and His Steam Shovel, which is one I had when I was younger, along with The Little House. And then I read, along with that, Mabel the Cable Car and Caddy and the Big Snow. And they're all by the same author, Virginia. I can't remember her last name. But they are all by the same author, so that's why I picked up the other 2. And again, that was all part of the nostalgia read, as was The Snowy Day. And along with that, I read the rest of the books about Peter, which was Whistle for Willie, which was about Peter and his little wiener dog Willie. And again, I have a dachshund, so. Then there was Peter's Chair, which was about siblings, basically. A letter to Amy about friendship. Goggles, about bullies and sharing. Hi Cat, which was about his best friend. And Pet Show. So they were all pretty cute. They all. And I loved the illustrations in them. They were very well done. And, they're more of, I would say, younger picture books. They have a lot less words per page than The Little House, Mabel and the Cable Car, Mike Mulligan, and Caddy and the Big Snow. I would say they're good for more like, those who are just getting ready to transition out of picture books, whereas, the Peter series, the Snowy Day series, would be good for, even the youngest of readers, even like children who can't quite read yet. They're much quicker for like a bedtime story even. So then I read the Curious George series, along with a couple of the newer ones. So to start with, I read Cecily G and the 9 Monkeys, which is about this giraffe, Cecily Giraffe, and Curious George's family. And then I read Curious George takes a job, rides a bike, gets a medal, and goes to the hospital, which were the original ones. Again, nostalgia read, nice and cute. And we got 3 new ones, and again, same thing, nice and cute. In the Snow, Votes, and Dreams. So, I really enjoyed those. And I just realized how many I actually read in March. This was a lot. So then I read the Madeline books, and I adored Madeline growing up. I would constantly check it out from the library, and I loved the artwork in it, and I still think the artwork is cool. Yeah, I love how it's in full color for the landscapes. And again, nice, simple, quick reads. So in that one, in March, I read Madeline's Rescue, Madeline and the Bad Hat, Madeline in London, Madeline and the Gypsies, and Madeline's Christmas. And I believe I read the rest of those in April. So then I read Corduroy, which was Corduroy, A Pocket for Corduroy, A Christmas Wish for Corduroy, and then by the same author, Dandelion. Then I read Where the Wild Things Are, and that again was one of my favorites growing up, so that was that one. Madeline Finn and the Library Dog, and then Madeline Finn and the Shelter Dog. I love dogs, they're just something cute. Then my favorite Dr. Seuss book, and one that is arguably not for children, although as a child I loved it, and I didn't realize the politicalness behind it, but the Butter Battle book. And I stand by it, I still love it, and that was one I actually remember, like, every night, read mommy, read daddy, and they would actually get tired of it because I asked them to read it so much. And for those who don't know, the Butter Battle book is basically the story of the Cold War taken to an extreme end. And it's very satirical, but it's done in the Dr. Seuss rhymes with the Dr. Seuss characters and the wonky contraptions, and reading it as an adult, I was like, wow, how did I not catch this as a child? So then, the last two books that I actually read were Cinderella and the Incredible Techno Slippers. Obviously a retelling of Cinderella. Instead of a glass shoe, it's a slipper that will make her dance. Her father is a toy manufacturer. She helps him. So that one was okay. It was different. Then, along with the Big Cat series I read the couple months previous, they had one about marine mammals, and I read the one on seals, because seals are one of my favorite marine mammals. I didn't continue with that because I got a little bored with it. So then, on to audio. In March, I listened to Once Upon a Tower, which was in the same series as The Ugly Duchess. Once Upon a Tower, I also did not like. It was just, they're just not for me. So I gave that one 2 stars, and I said I'm done with the series. Not gonna read or listen to anymore. However, other people might like it better. I just didn't particularly care for it. Then I also started the Kiss Quotient series, so I listened to the Kiss Quotient, and I did enjoy it. That was more of a modern day contemporary romance, so I did like that one pretty well. Then manga and comics. So I finished the Rosario Vampire Season 2 with volumes 5 through 14, and same as last month, I still enjoyed it. Thought the girls were very well fleshed out. Loved their friendship. The very ending is just kind of like everything happens and then boom, back to normal. So that was a little disappointing, but it was also kind of nice to see that everything they had all been through didn't diminish their friendship, or anything. And then I started another harem manga, which was We Never Learn, and that was volumes 1 through 5. That was more of a contemporary. However, I did like it better than Nisekoi. And the characters were also a little bit older than they were in Nisekoi. So, in We Never Learn, all the characters, I should say the youngest main characters, are in their final year of high school. And the main character, Naruyuki, is told that in order to get special recommendation to go to college, which it means a full scholarship to college, he must tutor these 3 girls and get them all to pass. The problem is you have Rizu Ogata, who is an absolute whiz at math. However, she wants to go into humanities, literary. She fails every literature test. Then you have Fumino, who is the literary whiz, but she wants to go on a math, into the STEM field, the math field, because she wants to be an astronomer. And same as Rizu, very bad math scores. Well, I should say, basically, same idea as Rizu. And then you have Uruko, who is a swimming prodigy, not good at academics. However, she has to meet a threshold to get into college. So then he has to tutor them, and the first 5 volumes are basically introducing those girls, along with a few others, and I'll speak about them later because they come in more later. Then I also finished the Justice League Odyssey series with volumes 2 through 4. So yeah, basically Justice League Odyssey is where Cyborg, one of the Green Lanterns, Jessica Cruz, Cyborg, and then Starfire all get sucked into the Ghost Sector. And I really like Starfire, so when I saw her on the cover of one of those, that's kind of why I picked it up. I like Starfire and Cyborg, 2 of my favorite characters. It was a pretty good series. It did kind of get a little bit crazy in the last couple volumes, but I've come to expect that from comics. So yeah, it wasn't bad. So then in April, for books, I read the book Edge of Tomorrow, which is also known as All You Need Is Kill. This was originally a Japanese novel. It was translated to English. It was made into a movie by the same name, Edge of Tomorrow. I liked the book. I thought the book was a very interesting sci-fi world. I liked the movie okay. However, I despised the ending. I despise when there's a happy ending in the book and they make it sad, or there's a sad ending in the book and they make it happy. So they did one of those 2 things in the movie. I'm not going to spoil it. I know it's kind of older, but, you know, people like me who take forever to get to movies or books don't want to be spoiled. So, yeah, I did enjoy the book, though. The translation I thought was good. You know, it read just fine. I did enjoy it. You know, I did enjoy the fact that they kept at least some of the Japanese cultural nuances. I guess really what was in the original. So then I read Cursed Bunny, which is a collection of short stories, and it kind of defies genre. Some of them were horror, some of them were just kind of contemporary, but yeah. I really enjoyed that, and some of the stories were really creepy. Some of them really made me think. So yeah, I highly recommend that. Then I read Daughter of the Moon Goddess, and the cover on that one was absolutely beautiful. I would say that one falls somewhere in between young adult and new adult, because to me, a true young adult book is more like they're in school, they're with their parents, they're learning to be an adult sort of thing. And the new adult is kind of like they've just moved out on their own, or, you know, just gone to college maybe, or just graduated college perhaps. And so in that one, the main character had left her mother for, for reasons that were, pretty good reasons. Like, there was some danger, so she left and she started to make her own way. And so I did enjoy that. I did feel like it was a little long in parts. Like, you have the first part where she's with her mother, and then the second part, where she's now with this army. And I felt like parts of that were a little, not necessarily long, but like she kind of forgot about her mother there. And originally, she was doing this to get back to her mother, and then she just kind of forgets about her. So I was kind of like, okay, like it's not bad, but it's also kind of like lost direction, I guess is the best way to say, there for a while. Then I read book 3 of the Dork Diaries, which was Tales from a Not So Talented Pop Star. I think I'm done with that series. I've rated all of them like 2 stars. I just don't care for the main character. I know she's only in 8th grade, but she comes off as very self-centered. And in the first book, she was extremely shallow. I do like that she has some more depth in these later books, but I think it might just be too young for me. I mean, I imagine myself enjoying them when I was in middle school, but now, no, I'm just done with them. So then I read 3 more Madeline books, which was the original Madeline. I had to wait for it from my library. And then Madeline at the White House and Madeline in the Old House in Paris. And those 2 were actually written by the grandson of the original series. And so I thought they fit very well with the storytelling and the aesthetic of the originals. Then I also read The Stinky Cheese Man and Other Fairly Stupid Tales, which was one that I read way back in 5th grade. And I thought it was absolutely hilarious, and I still think it is. I was kind of laughing throughout the whole book. It's basically retellings of fairy tales done in a humorous / stupid way. So, like, the Stinky Cheese Man is a knockoff of the Gingerbread Man. And yeah, I just find it absolutely hilarious. He's made out of stinky cheese with olives for eyes and a piece of bacon for his mouth. And nobody wants anything to do with him because he stinks. And yeah, it was pretty funny. So then, with the Magic Tree House, they also had what was called fact trackers, and they're continuing those. So the Snow Leopards and Other Wild Cats was the companion to Sunlight with the Snow Leopard. And so yeah, it was kind of, just basic facts, but I think for the age it's aimed at, like, it's done very well. It's got enough facts that, oh, I'm really interested in this now, I want to find out more. And, if you're not, then you've got at least basic information and understanding. So then, my audiobooks in April were Fix Her Up, Love Her or Lose Her, and The Bride Test. So obviously The Bride Test was the second book in the Kiss Quotient series, and I actually enjoyed that one about the same as the Kiss Quotient. It had pretty good characters. I felt like there was less drama, so that was always good. And yeah, just again, simple kind of romance. Fix Her Up and Love Her or Lose Her were in a series called Hot and Hammered. Basically, Fix Her Up follows Georgie, who is the youngest of a trio of siblings, and they all are part of their father's remodeling business where they flip houses. Then Love Her or Lose Her, the male lead in that book is employed by them. Both of those I rated 2 stars. They were just kinda I didn't care for the characters. The first one I felt had way too much drama. The second one, I just didn't care for the characters. The guy was a little over domineering, so I was just, not my cup of tea. One thing I did like about the second book, though, is that the characters were married, and they had been married for 10 years. They were high school sweethearts, and the man went to war, and when he came back, he was much quieter and everything, and so communication kind of broke down. And then the wife was like, okay, look, we need a break. And then they went to counseling. The counseling helped. And I did like, that was represented. And I also liked that even though they went to the counseling, like, they both admitted at the end, like, we're okay, but we're only going to be okay if we keep trying. So I did like that. Then for manga and comics, I started Justice League Dark, the rebirth led by Wonder Woman. I read the first 2 volumes that month, and then I finished it in May, so I'll talk about that with May stuff. Then I read volumes 5 and 6 of the Kuma 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 Bear manga. So it started out as light novel, then I believe it went to manga, and then the third one was the anime, although I could be getting that mixed up. It could be anime and then manga, but the manga was extremely close to the light novels. Again, just kind of cute and sweet and simple. Then I read a whole bunch of Junji Ito. He is a very popular horror manga artist, and pretty much all of them I read were short story collections. So I read Fragments of Fragments of Horror, Ramina, Censor, Venus in the Blind Spot, Shiver, and Smashed. So now, my favorite out of those, I'd have to say it's probably Ramina, because I adore sci-fi, and Ramina was sci-fi horror. There's a girl named Ramina. Her father is an astronomer. He finds a planet, and he names it Ramina. And basically this planet is, I guess it's sentient. I'm not entirely sure. But it moves through the universe and eats things. And it's headed for Earth. And I do really like Junji Ito's style of drawing. It can be a mixed bag. It can take some getting used to. I didn't like it at first. But especially in Ramina, just like the details are really good and it's very creepy. I will say all his stories are pretty good. There's a few that are more not, but he tends to do, again, like really good social horror as well. Like, it's not all social horror, but there are aspects to it where, like, sometimes it's not the ghost that's the scariest thing. It's how the humans treat each other. So yeah, I definitely recommend checking out some Junji Ito books if you are into horror manga. And then I continued with We Never Learn with volumes 6 and 7. So I actually kind of read that over several months. I don't know why it took me so long. Like, I did enjoy it, and I felt like all the girls were given very equal time in the books. And, like, again, the friendships between them were great. They never got in arguments because they all liked the same guy, and so we had, I said, the 3 girls who were his age, which were Rizu, Fumino, and Aruka. Then we have the two who are older. One girl is only a year older. That's Asumi. And then the other one is the teacher, who is Mafuyu Kurisu Sensei. And I think, like, We Never Learned did a good job of, again, like I said, equal screen time to all the girls. And, like, there was equal humor, / cringe for some of it, between Naruyuki and all the females, all the women in it. So I didn't really feel like there's any single one that was like better than the others for him to end up with, like you sometimes do get in harems. So yeah. Let's move on to May now, because this is getting kind of long. So in May, I read volume 6 of the Kuma 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 Bear light novels. Same as the others, short, sweet, cute. Then I read Eternal Lover, which was given to me by a coworker. It was 4 short stories. Again, romance. It was paranormal romance, so it was a little better. But I just felt like some of them were, well, actually all of them really were way too heavy on the romance. Like, I don't mind romance, but I like having side plots. I should say that, like important side plots, instead of it's just a relationship. At least in most romance novels. Now, there are some where it being just a relationship are done well. However, that was one I was kind of about. Then I read The Mermaid from Jeju. And last year I read The Island of Sea Women, which was also set on the Korean island of Jeju. And that is an island where these female freedivers called Henyeo live. And unfortunately, most of the Henyeo are now in their 60s, I believe, is the youngest. And so yeah, I enjoy reading about stuff like that, that is kind of forgotten history. And Jeju Island had some pretty terrible things happen on it during World War II and the Korean War, because it's kind of like right there on the split between North and South, and so there was a lot of communist hunts, and there was a slaughter, and yeah, it could be heartbreaking, and this captured that very well. So then I read Monster of Markets trilogy, which a good friend of mine, my best friend actually, let me borrow, and that was Not Even Bones, Only Ashes Remain, and When Villains Rise. And basically it's a alternate universe fantasy where there's all sorts of different monsters. They call them unnaturals, which I guess is a better term, because they're not necessarily monsters. Like, there's one particular creature that, I glow. Like, literally glow like a glow stick. That's all they can do. And so yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting. It's one of those that the main character is the villain, in a way, but she's not the worst villain. So, I kind of like the morally gray area. And that obviously is complete. It's a trilogy with 3 books. And it was also a webtoon, which is actually why my friend bought it. She started the webtoon and they only had the first 2 books done. So she wanted to finish it. And she was like, you should read this. It's really good. And yeah, it was. So then I read Bleak House, which obviously is a Charles Dickens book. And I like Charles Dickens. His characters, they're like, you can relate to them because, you kind of see them in your everyday life. So yeah, I did enjoy that, and I enjoyed it more because I read it with a great group on Goodreads, and that is the Dickensians. And the moderator who leads all these discussions, she actually is a retired deputy head teacher from England, and she taught Dickens, and so she's very knowledgeable about not only Dickens himself but the Victorian era. And every day we would read a chapter, and so every day she would post short synopsis of what happened in the chapter. And like, for example, you know that the main character, Esther, she gets smallpox in the course of the book. And so when, it's never actually stated, but, we kind of got into a discussion about smallpox and smallpox vaccines and different ways people had tried to prevent it. And so, she posted quite a bit of information on, like, inoculation, inoculation, I believe, was the other one, where basically somebody who had smallpox, once it had started to scab over, they took a scab and would then blow it into the nose of a healthy person, and they would get a milder form of smallpox, and then obviously not be able to get it again. And yeah, she just gives a lot of valuable information. And like I said, reading it a chapter a day, it's a large group, so you kind of get viewpoints of many different people, and it's really fun too to have the different theories of, like, oh, well, this is what this means, this is what that means, and then, like, oh, this is what I think of this person, and everything. So then I read the last actual book I read was a play. That was another Shakespeare play, Much Ado About Nothing. That one was a little more complicated, like, sentence structure and such. But I have the Folger editions of Shakespeare, where they basically rephrase or reword something that might be a little difficult on the other page, so I found that very helpful. But Much Ado About Nothing, I didn't really find it that funny as I have others of his plays. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't that funny. I don't really know what I would say it was. I guess I'd say it's more of a satire. Kind of a satire of marriage and love. So yeah, it was definitely an interesting one. And I'm sorry, I actually did miss one of these, which was the Brooklyn House Magician's Manual, which is a companion to The Kane Chronicles by Rick Riordan. That was the first Rick Riordan series I read, and I actually really liked it. And this was just kind of a guide to, like, different gods. And I believe it had a couple short stories. So yeah, I enjoyed that as well. And then, for my audiobooks, again, I only listened to 2 in May, and that was Tools of Engagement, which is the last book in the Hot and Hammered series that I started in April. And Tools of Engagement I actually really, really liked. And the author has said that that was her favorite couple. And, like, it kind of shows. They have, out of all 3 books, like, this has the best banter between them. and it has the best, like, relationship issue, I think, and it has a pretty good anxiety rep for the female main character, and she is the older sister of Georgie from the first book. So she's the third sibling in that family-owned business. And then her and Wes, and Wes was a Texas cowboy, and he came to take care of his little niece. And so that was kind of like the drama in there, and I thought it was really good. Like, the whole found family, enemies to friends to lovers was just, it was well done. I didn't really enjoy that one. And then I listened to The Heart Principle, which was the final book of the Kiss Quotient series. And I would have to say that one was actually the best of the series, but it was also extremely heavy. Like, it dealt with really heavy topics. The female lead in that, she had to take care of her father who had a stroke while she was dealing with her autism, and her sister and her mother not really accepting that she is on the autism spectrum. And it was just very deep. And then the male main character had to deal with the fact that he had cancer, and what that meant for his future. And it was like heavy, but it was really good. However, I will say, like, you kind of have to be in the right space to read it. Like, if you're not looking for anything other than just a quick, cute romance, like, if that's what you want, don't go for The Heart Principle. But if you're okay or want something that's a little deeper, that's a really good one. So then in May, for my manga / comics, I read quite a bit in May. So I read the last 2 volumes of Justice League Dark. And again, Justice League Dark was led by Wonder Woman. It also has Zatanna. I believe it has Deadman in it. It's basically kind of like the magic part. And the Upside Down Man is really kind of creepy looking with those teeth and everything. And yeah, it was more of horror than anything. And I can say, like, if you are into horror comics, pick up the Rebirth Justice League Dark. The New 52 Justice League Dark kind of has that vibe as well, but I feel like this one did it better. Then, of course, I read Justice League Death Metal. And Death Metal, if you don't know, like, there was this huge event with, like, the Batman Who Laughs, which I read that one last year. I read a lot of the metal event. I read Dark Knight's Metal, Dark Knight's Rising, which is basically, what if Bruce Wayne hadn't been Batman, but instead had gotten the powers of one of the other Justice League members and then turned evil. So this was all part of that. That one was okay. I feel like the whole metal storyline now has gotten a little repetitive, and I'm now ready to see what has this done to the universe. Like, what are the repercussions? And unfortunately, because I know how DC is, I don't really think they're going to go anywhere with the repercussions, which is going to irritate me. But I haven't read that much of Rebirth yet. I think I read, like, The Flash and Aquaman. No, I haven't gotten to The Flash yet. I only read Aquaman. And yes, that really hasn't gotten far. So I'm kind of like, okay. And it does mention it, but that's about it. Then I read New Superman, volumes 1 through 3. I thought it was kind of cool to see a different take on Superman. This one is set in China, and they basically want to make their own superheroes. So you have a Batman and a Wonder Woman stand-in as well, and they're all younger, just graduating high school, probably about 17, 18, maybe 19. So I thought that was pretty cool to kind of see that dynamic. And then I started to read The Hellblazer. So I started with, I have Constantine the Hellblazer, which I read volumes 1 and 2 of, and that one is actually when he moved over to Sandman. Then I read The Hellblazer, volumes 1 through 4. That was his Rebirth series. And then that first one I mentioned, Constantine the Hellblazer, was post-Rebirth. Then I read John Constantine Hellblazer, which was the DCU era, which was between New 52 and Rebirth. And then I read back the 80s when he first started his original Hellblazer Volume 1. And I think it was kind of interesting to see, Constantine, because obviously he's kind of on the darker side of things. He's usually Vertigo, which is DC's, I guess you'd really say Black Label now, since they've got Black Label out. But, I found it interesting, the dealing with the dark side of humanity sort of thing. Then I read more of We Never Learn, 8 through 13, in May. So you're just kind of working through that. And it was around then that I was like, okay, I'm kind of ready to be done with this. It's getting a little repetitive. But, again, it's not bad. It just got a little repetitive, because there's only so much you can do with, he's studying with these girls and this happens and that happens. So yeah. And then the worst series I've read this year, and yet I read the whole series over the course of like a week, A Devil and Her Love Song, which was 13 volumes. Now, up till about, I believe it was 11 or so, it was okay. Basically, you have Maria, who was in a Catholic school, and she got expelled for her mouth and then punching a nun. Yeah. And so it's called A Devil and Her Love Song because she is a very, very blunt person. So for example, she goes to her new school and the girls are kind of talking about her, and she goes up to them and she's like, stop being two-faced. And so nobody likes her, and so she tries to change and feels like she has to change, which I didn't really enjoy. Like, I'm sorry, you're blunt, they can get over it. Like, I don't think she was really rude in any place. And then their teacher, the way he just constantly puts her down and berates her, and whenever she tries to stand up for herself, he gets mad and he tries to get her in trouble. And I'm just like, are you a teacher or are you 12? Like, you're not even acting these characters' age. They're like 15 or 16, and he literally acts like he's 12, and he's at least 40, I believe. And yeah, that just really irked me. And then the absolute worst part of it is that unfortunately, Maria is the child of a rape. I don't have a problem with that per se, but where it gets me is, okay, she's the child of a rape because of this. Her mother was 14 when she had her, so she was obviously a very young victim. And so then everybody looks down on her mother because of this. That irked me. And then due to all of this, her mother kills herself. And then, at one point, Maria goes to find her father. And when she finds her father, he was an American soldier, and he's now become a priest who takes in orphans. Let that sink in. Yeah. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? And then, when Maria's there, she meets him and everything. And actually, it's mostly because she goes to meet her grandparents. And then her grandparents, who are her mother's parents, of course, blame her for what happened to her mother. And it just, again, I was just like, are you kidding me? It is not her fault. It is not her mother's fault. It is this guy's fault. And so then she, with the help of one of her friends, who was actually raised by her biological father, he takes her to meet the father, finds out everything, and then Maria just forgives him. After finding out that after he found out her mother had her, he started writing to her mother, please tell me about our daughter, please tell me about our daughter. So basically, not only did you rape this girl, you stalked her. And you stalked her to the point where she committed suicide while holding her daughter in her arms. And then Maria just flat out forgives him. And I was just like, I literally threw the book across the room. I was like, absolutely not. Like, I wouldn't have minded if she was like, okay, whatever. It happened, it's in the past. I'm done with you. I don't ever want to talk to you again. But no, to just be like, oh yeah, you're my dad. No. And it gets worse. It follows her to graduation. When she goes to graduate, she goes back to see her father and says, well, I'm not going to go to college because I need to pay you back for all the money you gave me for school. No, you owe him nothing. And yeah, just no, I'm sorry, absolute worst series. However, I did then read one of the best manga series, which is called Sweat and Soap. I read the first 5 volumes in May, and I actually really liked that one. It, again, it's a contemporary romance manga, and it only focuses on the romance. But that's why I said, sometimes I really do like it, because just the characters are super lovable, and, just their interactions are really cute, and it's just like, they're so respectful of each other, and like, it follows them deciding to move in together, and the guy is like, look, I don't want to rush you, but, do you want to do this? And he just kind of, like, he slowly gets to know her, and it's like, it's so organic, and just, like, they communicate so well. Like, right after they move in together, they get in this big argument, because he is kinda always, like, trying to do things for her, like, oh, there's a dish in the sink, let me wash it. Oh, let me do this, let me do that. And it just kind of gets on her nerves, so she's finally like, look, I can do stuff too. Like, I'm not a porcelain doll. And she feels real bad for doing it. And he's like, no, no, no. He's like, that's fine. He's like, I'm glad you told me this. Because if you don't tell me, how am I supposed to know? Like, I don't want to hurt you. So if I'm doing something, please let me know. And just like they have so much respect for each other, and it's absolutely adorable. So then I continued with Junji Ito with Love Sickness, which was another short story collection, the newest one, and there's about to be another one in, I believe it's either the end of this month or beginning of August. So yeah, and again, just lovely artwork, really creepy stories. The very last story I didn't care for, but it was literally one sheet, front and back of a page done. And it was more just kind of like a funny story. And then the last one I read was Himawari House, which was about a half Japanese, half American girl who goes to a share house in Japan for the year after she graduates high school. And it's just got like a lot of good commentary about really learning a new language, getting into a new culture, or finding your old language and old culture, because she moved to America when she was like 7 or 8 and was made fun of for being Japanese. So she kind of tried to forget her Japanese heritage and did forget the language, and then decided to reconnect with it. And then the two girls that she becomes really close friends with, one is Korean and one is from Shanghai, China. I believe either Shanghai or possibly Hong Kong. I don't remember. But yeah, it was a really good book anyways. Then in June, I read Spin the Dawn and Unravel the Dusk. And these are actually by Elizabeth Lim, who also wrote Six Crimson Cranes. And one thing I did really like is that in, I believe it was Spin the Dawn, they mentioned that, 100 years ago, in this other country, there was Princess Shiori who saved her brothers. And obviously, in Six Crimson Cranes, you have Princess Shiori who saves her brothers. So I thought that was a cute little Easter egg. It was an interesting series. I did like the magic in it. However, I did feel like the romance kind of overtook it, but it wasn't bad. Then I finished Pictures from Italy, which was Charles Dickens' travelogue of Italy. That one took me quite a while to read, but it takes me a while to read digital books on my Kindle versus if I have them on my phone. So yeah, that was one that was on my Kindle. That went with a read again when in Dickensians, we have a side read, and we had read Little Dorrit last year, and Pictures from Italy was our side read, and yeah, I just now got around to finishing it. But it was pretty fun. Like, I enjoy seeing Charles Dickens' portrayal of people. Like, he's very humorous, and he describes landscapes and buildings very well, and so yeah, I did enjoy that. Then I read My Sister's Keeper, which was one of the Harley Quinn Presents back from the 70s. Blech. Nope, could not do it. Just no. So I did finish it, but basically a coworker of mine gave me like 200 of them. They weren't all from the 70s, but just kind of like a whole bunch of romance, because that's pretty much all she reads is romance. And she was like, hey, I just moved. These are all doubles. Because she would buy them for like 10 cents, 5 cents a piece. So, she'd just pick up whatever romance novels were there, not worrying about if they were doubles. So I went through those after this and got rid of a bunch because I read like 2 or 3 of them and didn't enjoy any. So I was like, I'm just going to go through them and see. And there's a bunch of them from the synopsis that I was just like, nope. And then I read the first pages of a couple of them, was like, nope. And there's a few I've kept that I'm going to try, but I'm going to allow myself to DNF, which I normally don't. So then I read The Semester of Our Discontent. That was another one from a different coworker. It's kind of a cozy mystery set with a college English professor who basically solves a murder. Nothing super different there, but it was pretty cool, and I did enjoy the little twist. Then I read Cleopatra and Frankenstein, which I believe my review was nasty people being nasty to each other. Pardon me, which fits it to a T. I didn't mind it. There were some good quotes, but it was just kind of like, okay, done. Then, along with the Classics Remixed, that month I read Travelers Along the Way, which was a Robin Hood remix. This was set back during the times of the Third Crusades, and it was set in the Middle East, and you have kind of a melting pot of characters. You have the 2 main characters who are sisters, who are Muslim. Then you have their one of their childhood friends, who is also Muslim. He is Sunni, and they are Shiite. Then you have a girl who's Mongol. Then you have a Jewish girl, and then you have one of the actual English Crusaders who kind of falls in with them. So yeah, it was a very well done, like, melting pot story that did really fit with the whole Robin Hood thing. But instead of stealing just money, they actually stole the peace. Or, well, I guess you could say stole it. They stole it and then brought it to the land, I guess is the best way to put it. But yes, I did enjoy that. Like I said, I do enjoy that series. Then, the last 2 actual books I read were both children books, and they were both about animals. Wabi Sabi, about a cat named Wabi Sabi, which is a Japanese saying / kind of like lifestyle to basically slow down and look at simple things. And then we have Wonton and Chopstick, which is a cat and dog tale told in haiku. Sorry, I keep getting stuff in my throat. But I did like the fact that at the end you find out the dog is not named Chopstick. He is named Basho, who is a famous Japanese haiku writer from the past. And I thought that was very fitting, especially being that the book was told in short haikus. And again, both of them were simple, light, lovely illustrations, just your normal children's book. And then I listened to quite a few audiobooks in June. We have Malice, which is a retelling of Sleeping Beauty, but it is told by the Bad Fairy. It was actually a pretty interesting take on it. She herself is not a fairy. She is part of a group of people who have been blessed by the fairies to be able to use their blood to do things, make charms. So that was pretty interesting. Then I listened to A Psalm for the Wild Built, which is, I guess you would call it solar punk. It's uplifting sci-fi for the future. Like, instead of there being an apocalypse or another war, we've all learned how to get along. And yeah, it was pretty interesting. I did enjoy seeing the robot. It was short, it was like 4 hours. Then I listened to What If It's Us? And that one was just okay. I felt like it was a little juvenile, but, it was okay. Then Malibu Rising, which I really, really, really liked. And this follows the 4 children of Mick Riva. And yeah, just read it. Like, and this was a Taylor Jenkins Reid book. I've read another one of hers now and absolutely loved it. So I think it's safe to say that I will love pretty much all of her books. But yeah, like Malibu Rising, and some of the quotes, like, the one girl says to her father, because he basically walked off, she says, "It must be nice to be weak." I wouldn't know, because she's the oldest, so she's kind of had to like step up, and just wow. And then, when their mother dies, she's 17, and so she's like, "I have to hold it together for another 2 months, 3 months until I turn 18, so that I can be responsible for my siblings and us not get broken up." And on her 18th birthday, she drives to the courthouse and takes guardianship of them. And one of the quotes here is, when you're the only one, you don't have the luxury to say you can't. No matter how hard it is, no matter what it is, you have to. And that just, like, resounded with me. And then the last audiobook was It Happened One Summer. That was by the same author who did the Hot and Hammered series, and this was book 1 in the Ballinger sisters. I wound up liking it okay. The first 3 chapters, though, I could not stand Piper, the female lead. Like, she was just the party girl, and she was she seemed to be super shallow, and yeah. However, you could see with her sister Hannah, you could tell she cared about her, and you could see some things in there. But then further on, she'd never cooked, and she is 28. How do you get to be 28 and you have never cooked a single thing? And then at one point she calls a cab and she's like, "I don't even know if I have enough money. I've always just used my stepfather's credit card, and then I guess, it gets emailed to him or something, and he pays it. I don't even know how he pays it." And again, I'm like, "You're 28, how do you not know this?" But, she did get some more depth throughout the book. So, yeah. And then manga/comics, I read the first volume of Lore Olympus, which is a retelling of the Hades and Phesperon myth. This was originally published on Webtoons, but yeah, I'd heard a lot about it. When I saw they published it and the library had it, I was like, "Hey, yeah, I'll try it." And I enjoyed it. I did. The art's kind of, yeah. It's really angular and just, it's just different. I don't mind it though. I got used to it. Then I read more of the Hellblazer, and again, this was the original 80s, volumes 2 through 4. And same thing. It was kind of interesting to see the dark side and everything. Then I read, of course, Harley Quinn, volumes 1 and 2. and that would be in Rebirth, and then that'll be in my Harley Quinn readathon whenever I finish that. Then I read the next couple volumes of We Never Learn, volumes 14 and 15, and then I finished that with volumes 16 through 21 in July. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk about them now. So basically, the first 16 volumes are your main story, and like I said, by 14 I was ready to get to the ending. It was just getting repetitive. And then volume 16, you finally get the resolution. They go through their exams for college and get the results. Now, one thing I did like is that I mentioned there was 5 girls. So you get an ending where he ends up with each girl in these last volumes. So volume 17 is Iruka's ending. Then 18 is Rizu's. 19 is Fumino's. 20 is Asumi. And 21 is Mafuyu Karisu. Now, I do like that for both Asumi and Mafuyu, this is after he graduates college. So, obviously, he is a full adult. And, I mean, honestly, the Asumi one never bothered me much because she's 1 year older than him. Her particular story takes place 6 years after his graduation from high school. So he's graduated college with his teaching degree and has had it for 2 years. The one with Mafuyu, it doesn't say, but I know it's been at least 4 years because he's graduated college. And I wish they would have done that with the other girls as well. Now, Iruka, I believe they do go to when they're 20 or 21. And then Rizu, they're in their first year of college. Same with Fumino. I would say my least favorite of them all was Fumino, but I feel like she's gotten the short end of the stick throughout the whole series. That she's just been kind of there to even it out. And I do like as well that at least in Iruka, Rizu, and Fumino's, everyone else is still there. So, and you actually still do get Asumi and Mafuyu in them. That is one thing I missed in Asumi and Mafuyu's stories, is that nobody else was there. And then another thing I did enjoy in Mafuyu's was that you still had Naruyuki's family. So, yeah. And then I read the first 20 volumes of Golden Kamui. Golden Kamui is a historic fiction manga, and I think it's so cool. It's set back right before World War I, during the gold rush in Hokkaido, and it brings up the Anzu people, who were a tribe in Japan, and I believe they were in Japan and Russia and China, and so it brings their culture into it. And then you have they travel to another island, which is half Russian, so then you get some Russian culture. And then there's 2 other native peoples, so you get their culture. And it's just obvious that a lot of research has gone into it. And yeah, it's really cool. So I do recommend that. And then I finished Sweat and Soap with volumes 6 through 11. And like I said, for my May stuff, I just thought it was cute. Absolutely loved it. And just absolutely adorable. And it goes all the way up, to their dating. They move in together, they get engaged, then they get married, and now in Japan, basically, well, it's kind of like here in the U.S. All you have to do to get married is you get the marriage certificate, you sign, the spouse signs, take it to the courthouse, file it, there you go, you're done. And then, so this volume 11 was actually them doing their wedding ceremony, which, they do after they actually get married, which I don't think that's quite as common here in the U.S., that, like, most of the time, on the day that you have your like, wedding ceremony, that's when you're legally married. Like, most people don't have the paperwork first. But yes, again, it was super cute. Then I read Frankenstein and Deserter, which are both by Junji Ito and their story collections. And then his final book that I have, Dissolving Classroom. So yeah, I've mostly had a good reading year. Obviously, there were a few in there that were duds, but that's going to happen. And then I'm going to do a tiny little book haul. I went to the library again. I went today and was only supposed to get one book. Walked out with 3. So, I got The Doors of Eden by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I read his book, Children of Time. And full disclosure, I hate spiders. Children of Time, half the book is written from the point of view of sentient spiders, half from the point of view of humans. I enjoyed the spiders more than the humans, which really surprised me. So this one isn't part of that series. It is... yeah. Basically just a standalone, and I believe it is... okay, yeah. 4 years ago, 2 girls went looking for monsters on Bodmin Moor. Only one came back. Lee thought she'd lost Mai, but now her friend came back. What happened that day on the moors, and where has she been all this time? The answers will open the door to a world beyond anything either of them might have imagined. So yeah, I enjoy sci-fi, and obviously, it was in the sci-fi section, and the cover looks like she was on another planet, so I'm super excited to read this. And it's just shy of being a doorstopper. For me, I have 3 levels of books. Basically, we have, for lengthwise, we have featherweights. So anytime you hear me say a book is a featherweight, that means it's something that's 280 pages or less. If you hear me say it's a chunkster, that means it's 400 to 600 pages. Then a doorstopper is anything over, 400 to 599. 600 or over is a doorstopper. And then I also have shelf benders, which are 1,000 plus, but I don't do as much with those. They tend to just go on my doorstoppers. So yeah, this is 597 pages. So 3 pages short of being a doorstopper. And my challenge is 10 doorstoppers this year. So I was really hoping this would fit. But anyways, then the next book I picked up was The Girl in the Stars by Mark Lawrence. And this is the first book of the Ice. So now Mark Lawrence wrote Red Sister, Grey Sister, Holy Sister, which was the book of the ancestors, set on the planet Abeth. This is also set on the planet Abeth. But basically the planet Abeth is one of the few habitable planets left. All the stars have died out. The youngest stars are all red giants. So their light's a lot dimmer, and so basically humanity moved to Abeth because it was close enough to the red giant star that they could get enough light and then it was like far enough away that it wouldn't get swallowed. But so obviously the planet's cold, and this takes place on the part that didn't get melted. So I'm definitely excited to read that. And then this is the book I was actually supposed to get today. This is the only one I went for. What Souls Are Made Of, a Wuthering Heights retelling. So as I said with the other ones, they change it up. So in this one, Caroline and Heathcliff are both from India. So yeah. And then I mentioned Lore Olympus Volume 1. Volume 2 came out, so I got that like a week ago. And then Other Minds, The Octopus, the Sea, and the Deep Origins of Consciousness. I actually recently got interested in octopi because I read, they've tested their DNA, and apparently there's no way that octopi were originally developed here on Earth, or their DNA developed here on Earth. And they're also extremely smart. So yeah, I saw this and was like, hey, you know what? I want to read it. So yeah, that was my extremely long ramble about what I have read this year and my mini book haul. So hopefully I will see you all for my July wrap-up in a few days, and ciao.